If you've been scrolling through endless lists of telescopes, reading specs that sound identical, and still feel stuck wondering which one actually delivers on the night ski promises, you're not alone. I've been there, flipping between high power and portable tags, trying to picture how the piece will feel in my hands and what the view will look like from my backyard. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. In this review, I'll walk through the real-world experience of a telescope that markets itself as a high-end, multifunction instrument, and I'll point out the moments where the hype lines up with everyday use and where it might leave you wishing for something else. First, let's talk about what most amateur astronomers actually care about when they pick a scope. The biggest decision points are usually aperture size, which determines how much light you can collect, the weight, which dictates whether you can comfortably move the instrument from the garage to the patio, and the ease of finding and tracking objects, especially if you're not spending hours aligning a mount. People also worry about the trade-off between a high magnification eyepiece that can show fine planetary detail and a wider field of view that makes it easier to locate faint deep sky targets. A good telescope should give you enough power to see the moons of Jupiter or the craters on the moon without turning every session into a wrestling match with heavy hardware. The model I'm looking at claims a high-power multifunction design and comes with a brass mirror, which is a nice nod to classic optics. The first thing you notice when you lift it out of the box is the weight. It's noticeably heavier than a typical entry-level tabletop scope, which actually works to its advantage once it's set up. The extra mass adds stability, reducing vibrations that can blur high magnification views. If you have a sturdy tripod or a dedicated observing platform, the heft becomes a benefit rather than a burden. The finder mirror is another practical element. Instead of a laser pointer or a digital finder scope, this traditional mirror lets you line up bright objects by aligning a reflected image. In practice, it's surprisingly effective for bright planets and the moon. You can quickly center the object before swapping in the main eyepiece, saving you a few minutes of guesswork on clear nights. Speaking of eyepieces, the included piece is geared toward higher magnification. When I swapped it onto the telescope and aimed at the Orion Nebula, the increased zoom let me see the core's intricate structure, something you often lose with lower power setups. The focal length of the instrument, combined with that eyepiece, pushes the magnification into the range where planetary detail becomes crisp. Saturn's rings came through with a nice edge definition, and Mars showed surface markings that are usually reserved for larger, more expensive scopes. However, that same magnification shrinks the field of view, making it a bit more challenging to locate faint, wide-field objects like the Andromeda Galaxy without first pinpointing them with a lower power glance. In everyday backyard sessions, I found that starting with a low-power finder eyepiece to locate a target, then switching to the high-power one, made the workflow smooth and prevented the frustration of hunting blind. So, who should consider adding this telescope to their gear? If you're an intermediate to advanced hobbyist who already knows a few constellations, enjoys planetary and lunar observing, and has a permanent or semi-permanent observing spot where you can leave the scope set up, this instrument fits nicely. Its stable weight and high magnification capability reward those who want to dive into detail without spending a fortune on a larger aperture. It also appeals to someone who appreciates the classic brass mirror aesthetic and doesn't mind a little extra heft in exchange for steadier views. The finder mirror is a genuine time-saver for those who prefer a more hands-on approach to locating objects rather than relying on electronic aids. Conversely, if you're just starting out, you might find the learning curve a bit steep. Beginners often prefer a lighter, point-and-shoot style telescope that can be packed into a car trunk and set up in minutes. The weight of this model can be a deterrent for casual weekend trips, and the high-power eyepiece can make locating faint deep sky objects feel like searching for a needle in a haystack. Additionally, if you're mainly interested in wide-field astrophotography or want to capture large nebulae and